Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope you're having a good day today so far. So, I thought since I am so strapped for time for recording episodes this week, in order to just get some stuff out there, you know, not necessarily because I need to, but because I absolutely do enjoy it, I thought it would be fun to take a little break from everything that's going on, politics, COVID, all of that, and just take a look at something that is interesting. At least I think it's interesting. Maybe other people will think it is too. I don't know. So I was going to break this up into two parts because it's going to cover all 50 states. So we'll do 25 and 25. And to me, it just sounded like fun. And sometimes you just need a break, kind of like when I did my ghost stories and thought that, something was going on in my house. If you listen to that episode, you would have heard something like crash upstairs, and I totally freaked out. My heart started racing. But no creepy ghost stories this time. But today, we're going to look at the first 25 from Reader's Digest of the 50 strangest unsolved mysteries from each state. And this was updated on August 17th of this year. So I just thought it sounded like fun. So it says every state harbors unpleasant secrets. Here are 50 of the strangest ones from around the country and why we may never learn the real truth. So number 1, Alabama, the Brasher Dye disappearance. The Dye brothers, Billy Howard and Robert, disappeared in 1956 along with their cousin Dan Brasher. They were last seen leaving a relative's house in rural Jefferson County in a 1947 green Ford, but no one even noticed they were missing because they were known to be heavy drinkers and often disappeared for days while sleeping off a binge. When a missing persons report was filed, investigators' questions were met with silence or tall tales. For example, of a bulldozer burying a car under a highway. The case remains unsolved. You can check out the missing person mysteries that were eventually solved. If you want to, there is a link to that. Hopefully these get more interesting as we go, would be nice. So, number 2, Alaska, the investor murders. In 1982, an $850,000 fishing boat named the Investor was seen burning off of the coast of Craig. Inside, 8 bodies were found: the owner, his pregnant wife, their 2 daughters, and 4 crewmen. They'd been shot to death and left to burn. One possible suspect was tried, but he's been acquitted due to a lack of hard evidence. Authorities still haven't determined a motive. The case is Alaska's biggest and most famous unsolved mystery. That's interesting. So, the nearly 75 boats in the District 4 Scene Fleet had left port for a next day opening in the waters west of Craig near Noyes Island. A few boats were still at the dock awaiting the inevitable repairs that are needed during the hectic, brief summer openings. But one boat was anchored in a deep cove just off adjacent Fish Egg Island across the harbor from Craig. As the fog lifted, several people noticed the unusual sight. Mark Colhurst, brand new 850,000 scene boat, the Investor, was not the type of boat to blend in anyway. The state-of-the-art vessel had cut a spectacular profile along the docks in several southeast towns that summer. It was the type of boat that the other captains just looked at and whistled. At 28, the Blaine, Washington-based fisherman was at the top of the fleet. In 12 years, Colhurst had risen from fishing out of a skiff in his hometown to captaining a top-line seiner with a crew of 8, including his wife and 2 young children. So, besides Colhurst, there was his wife Irene, who was 28, his cousin Mike Stewart, 19, Dean Moon, 19, Jerome Keown, 19, Chris Heyman, 18, and Colhurst's children, Kimberly, 5, and John, 4. It struck several people on the Craig waterfront as odd that the ship would be laid up while the rest of the fleet was taking part in the last opening of the season in the lucrative District 4 Seine area. And I was pronouncing that wrong. Now I know. But at least one person in Craig was not surprised that the Investor was not with the rest of the fleet. As the fog lifted, however, he was shocked to see it still afloat. Some 30 hours before, Colehurst, his family, and his crew had been murdered. The bodies were stacked in bunks on the boat. The boat had been anchored away from the town, and its sea cocks had been opened so it would sink in the relatively deep water off Fish Egg Island, but the boat was still afloat. With the same boat bobbing away with its grisly cargo, a young man was seen purchasing 2.5 gallons of gasoline in Craig. He retrieved the investor's sane skiff from near the Craig cold storage dock and returned to the vessel. Investigators say he doused the inside of the cabin and the forward sleeping area, paying particular attention to the forward crew area where several of the bodies were. The fire in that part of the boat was so intense that it was impossible to determine how many bodies were eventually found there. Around 4 p.m., the crew of the Troller Casino docked in Craig noticed the smoke rising from the anchored seiner. After alerting the authorities, the casino pulled away from the dock and headed for Fish Egg Island to help fight the fire. On the way, it passed the investor's skiff, headed back toward Craig. It hailed the skiff and spoke briefly to the man on board, and then went to the burning ship. The man in the skiff pulled up back to the Craig dock, spoke briefly to at least 3 people at the dock, walked up the dock into Craig, and disappeared. In the words of the state trooper investigators, he slipped into a time warp at the end of the dock. Okay, so there's a little bit more about that. But I think it's still unsolved. It's a very long article. Um, The investigation had 2 trials and had cost the state of Alaska nearly $3 million over 6 years. Even after the acquittal, state officials publicly said they still believed Pill was involved in the murders, and in 1990, Pill filed suit against the state of Alaska, seeking $175 million for wrongful prosecution. Okay, so his last name was Pill, who was charged. I can't find his first name. John Kenneth Pill. There you go. Number 3. Arizona, searching for Robert Fisher. Robert William Fisher, born in 1961, is one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. He's wanted for the murder of his wife and 2 kids and for blowing up the house in which they lived in Scottsdale on April 10, 2001. Fisher, the only suspect in the case, disappeared the night of the fire and hasn't been seen since. It's impossible he committed suicide, but it's possible he committed suicide, but equally possible he's living under an assumed identity. The FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. And then there's a link for 45 things police officers want you to know. Oh, it's a totally different thing. Not interested in that. Oh, this guy looks creepy. Okay, gross. Number 4, Arkansas, the Gurdon Light. Ever since the 1930s, a floating light appears above the railroad tracks near Gurdon sometime in late October. It's not in dispute whether the light appears because thousands of people have seen it. What remains a mystery is what causes the light. Some believe it's the ghost of William McLean, a railroad worker murdered in 1931, according to the Encyclopedia of Arkansas. Others believe it's a natural phenomenon caused by swamp gas or rock quartz beneath the land. It was featured on television's Unsolved Mysteries in 1994 and remains unsolved to this day. I actually think that I've seen that light before. Like videos where they show it, if it's the same thing I'm thinking of. And it is kind of weird. It's strange. But obviously, it's not a ghost. There's clearly a good explanation for it. Number 5, California. Did anyone survive the escape from Alcatraz? The supposedly escape-proof prison named for Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay claimed the lives of 33 prisoners who attempted to flee, but not necessarily John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and Frank Morris. In 1962, they escaped from their cells through holes they drilled in the wall of their cell. Unfortunately, that's where the story ends. What happened next remains a mystery, reads a portion of an FBI history of the investigation, according to NBC News. The case was closed in 1979, but people, including the families of the escapees, still wonder. So they escaped in 1962 and they were searching for them until 1979. That's kind of crazy. 7 prison escapees were never found. Wow. So more than 250 local, state, and federal officers were on the hunt for a third day Monday for two convicted murderers who successfully executed an elaborate plan to escape from a New York maximum security prison Saturday. Okay, so it's talking about that, and they go into talking about the escape from Alcatraz, which is known as the Rock, while it was operational. On the 50th anniversary of the notorious escape, two sisters of the Anglin brothers told the Daily Mail that they remained hopeful for 5 decades that their brothers and Morris had floated to safety. I've always believed they made it, and I haven't changed my mind about that, said one of the sisters, Mary Widener. Okay, sure, maybe they did. Who knows? Number 6, Colorado, the Black Forest haunting. Within weeks of moving into their home in the Black Forest area of Colorado Springs, all hell broke loose for the Lee family, according to our community now. There were flashing lights, footsteps, orchestra music, strange smells, and even sightings of ghostly faces. The Lee family lives there to this day, still reporting the same phenomena. No one can explain what it is, although a Hopi shaman who was called in to consult claims the house is located on a rip in the space time continuum where spirits can move freely between worlds. What makes people believe in this stuff? Like the science fiction of it all, like alternate realities, the multiverse, the space time continuums. What makes people believe in that stuff? I mean, there's no proof that any of it exists. And I mean, I know there's lots of things that, well, no, there's not. Because anything that I was going to say like religious things, there's no proof, but actually there is proof. So forget that statement altogether. But so why do people believe in it and stuff? That sounds that crazy, that far fetched. I'm curious as to why people believe that. But I mean, fine, it's interesting stuff nonetheless. It's cool to imagine things like that. I guess. Anyway, number 7, Connecticut. The shallow graves beneath New Haven Green. In 2012, Hurricane Sandy caused a tree to fall on New Haven Green. Tangled in the roots was a human skull dating back around 200 years. An archaeological dig followed, yielding more body fragments as well as coffin nails. It's suspected more than 5,000 bodies are buried under the green and that they may have been dragged out in the middle of the night, wrapped in a sheet, and buried in shallow, unmarked graves. Some theorize the people died during a terrible epidemic, though no one's sure of what. Here are the diseases you probably didn't realize exist today. And there's a link to that. New Haven Green. So I guess I don't know. There's some pictures of it. So the initial remains, a skull, spine, and rib cage, were found in the base of the tree. The discovery was made Tuesday afternoon by Katie Carbo, one of the protesters of Occupy New Haven, an encampment on the green that began last October and continued until they were evicted in the spring. I'm not sure what it is. Greenberg was mourning the loss of this magnificent Lincoln tree. He said it was planted in 1909 to mark the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. That's weird. It fell and unearthed all the skulls and skeletons just right before Halloween. They're happy that it happened because it got people into the mystery of New Haven Green. So there must be a lot of weird things behind that place. How to check it out. Number 8, Delaware. The inexplicable murder of Jane Marie Pritchard. Jane Marie Pritchard was conducting botany experiments in Blackbird State Forest in September 1986 when she was shot to death. Campers stumbled across her body later. Many hunters were in the forest that day, but investigators quickly ruled out an accidental shooting, according to Delaware Online. What they couldn't figure out, and still haven't, is why someone wanted Pritchard dead and who might have killed her. The case remains cold to this day. It's funny to think about like murder cases and things like that, how with all the technology that we have, how people still can actually get away with murder. Um, and it makes you wonder, are they really getting away with it, or is there some reason why it's not being solved? Because I feel like we just have so much technology to be able to solve almost any crime. So why are there still crimes that we can't figure out? It's kind of strange. Maybe it's just, luck of the person who committed the crime. I don't know. But you'd think that there'd be more solved. Number 9, Florida. The spontaneous combustion of Mary Reeser. In July of 1951, authorities found the body of 67-year-old Mary Reeser in her St. Petersburg apartment, or more accurately, the pile of mostly ash that once was Mary Reeser's body. Part of her lower leg and some of her spine remained. Apparently, her body had been almost entirely cremated, which is mind-boggling when you consider that cremation requires 3 hours of burning in a 3,000-degree fire. Even more bizarre, only Reeser's body had burned. The rest of her apartment was intact, even a pile of newspapers beside her body. That is so weird because, like, I've heard of other stories of spontaneous combustion, and it's like, until I see it, I have a hard time believing that it actually happens. But I have seen pictures, and then the question remains, is it a doctored photo? Because you can so easily doctor photos today. So are those real or are they faked? And, I find that so odd that a body can do that. And if a body does spontaneously combust, how does it not catch other things on fire? I mean, that's a fire. So how is it only the body stays on fire and nothing else catches on fire? That part doesn't make sense. Number 10, Georgia, the Bleeding House. One night in 1987, Minnie Winston saw blood on the floor of her Atlanta house. Terrified, she ran to find her husband. He was fine, but there was more blood. Everywhere. On the walls, oozing from the floor, seeping up from under kitchen appliances. She and her husband called the police, who found no evidence of a break in. What they were able to surmise was that the blood had come from a living human. No one has ever figured out where or whom the blood came from. Well, that's weird. Could you imagine? Ew. I couldn't even imagine. Like, blood doesn't bother me, but if I saw blood and I couldn't surmise where it came from, that would bother me. That would just totally freak me out. Number 11, Hawaii. What happened to Lisa? Is that Au? Oh, I don't know how you pronounce that. It's just AU is a last name. Oh, Um, more than 35 years ago, 19-year-old Lisa disappeared without a trace. Her car abandoned along a highway in Kailua. Her body turned up 10 days later, naked and decomposing. The coroner couldn't determine the cause of death, but police considered the case a homicide. Perhaps Hawaii's most notorious, since the police believe that Lisa may have been abducted by someone posing as a police officer. Or was it actually a police officer and they weren't posing at all? Did they ever consider that idea? Are they saying someone posing as a police officer because they know in fact it actually was an officer? Hmm. Number 12, Idaho. Strange mutilations. The towns of Jerome and Bliss have been plagued by bizarre mutilations since the 70s. Human, cattle, and deer. Genitals removed, the bodies drained entirely of blood, and no discernible footprints or other forensic evidence left at the scene. The official explanation by law enforcement is cult killings, but no arrest has ever been made and no cult has ever been identified. And I bet you that there's people who believe it's vampires. But do vampires remove body parts like that? I mean, would they take the genitals after draining their blood? I mean, I don't believe it's vampires because I don't think they're real, but I mean, I've read a lot of vampire stories, and as many different variations of vampires there are out there, I've never heard of any of them like removing body parts like that. Who knows? 13. Illinois. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon. So during the 40s, law enforcement received more than 24 cases of gassings in which the victims reported paralysis, coughing, nausea, and vomiting after smelling a strange, nauseous odor in their homes. No physical evidence was ever found, however, and the victims always survived. Some believe the attacks were a case of mass hysteria. Others believe the mad gasser actually existed or that the attacks were really the result of paranormal activity. The truth may or may not be out there. That's funny. I've heard about this story. And I know it wasn't it was not like carbon monoxide or anything like that. But they said that they would like smell the smell like coming. They think that he like would stand outside windows and somehow he got a hold of this gas and he would release the fumes into the homes. But he wouldn't do anything other than just release this gas and it would, paralyze people and cause them to throw up and get sick for a little while. Really weird why anybody would want to do that to somebody, unless maybe they were trying experiments out on unwitting people. Who knows? I just find that very odd that someone would take the time to do that. Number 14, Indiana, the mysterious fire poltergeist. So in 1941, a farmer in Odin had breakfast with his family and then headed out to his barn to begin his chores. Then he noticed smoke coming out of an upstairs window in his house. He ran back and, with the help of the volunteer fire department, put out the fire in an upstairs bedroom, only to have another fire break out in another room. All day long, as soon as they put out one fire, another would start elsewhere in the house, 28 in all. Believing his house to be haunted by poltergeists, the farmer tore it down and built a new one. The cause of the fires has never been determined. Oh, that's creepy. I know I've made this distinction before that I don't believe in ghosts, as in like seeing my dead grandma to come visit me or something, but that I do believe in spirits. I believe in angelic good spirits and I believe in demonic bad spirits. And this to me would sound like definitely a demonic spirit for whatever reason attaching themselves to this house, to cause harm to people. And it's so creepy because I know that they're real and it's like you wonder why. Why? I mean, obviously because they're demonic, they're evil, that's their nature. But still, it's creepy to think about, especially when you do really believe that that stuff is real. Number 15, Iowa, the boy with no appetite. In Cedar Falls, there lives a boy who never gets hungry or thirsty. It all started in 2013 when the boy, Landon Jones, who'd been completely fine up until then, came down with a bacterial infection in his left lung. Ever since then, he's never felt hunger or thirst. He only eats and drinks because he is reminded to do so. No one knows what caused this affliction. That's so weird. I wonder what that would be like to never feel hungry or thirsty. But like, how hard? I mean, like, if you didn't have someone reminding you to eat, especially if you're a kid, because you wouldn't think about it if you don't feel the signs of you need to, you wouldn't think about it and you could easily die because you don't feel it. That's weird. That's kind of like the people that they don't feel any pain. So you have to watch them very carefully because they could severely hurt themselves and they would never know it. That's really weird. I've never heard of that before. Like the pain I have, but someone never getting hungry or thirsty, I've never heard of that. Number 16, Kansas. The baffling disappearance of Randy Leach. In 1988, Randy Leach, a teenager from Leavenworth County, disappeared from a high school party and has never been found. What makes the case stranger is there had been rumors of satanic cult activity in the county in the days before Randy's disappearance, and the party site had been cleaned meticulously before investigators arrived. Soon after, it burned to the ground. Most people who've cooperated in the investigation have turned up dead, and county officials declined to pursue further leads. There are theories about what really happened that night, but we may never know the truth. Yeah, I think I remember reading about that. So I know about a lot of weird, like mystery stories. I watched a lot of videos and shows on cults and things like that, and I remember hearing about this one. And like, it's just like everybody was so scared to really say anything, especially when people would talk and then they'd end up dying mysteriously. So no one wanted to talk. And yeah, police were just like, let's just be done with this because it's killing people for us to even be looking into it. It's really weird. Number 17, Kentucky. The meat shower. Oh, this is weird and it's also very, very gross. Not a meteor shower, a meat shower. One day in 1876, over a farm in Kentucky, the sky rained down chunks of meat of indeterminate origin. Was it bear? Mutton? No one knew. The only explanation anyone has ever been able to offer is that the meat was the prey of vultures who had gorged themselves and then vomited while flying overhead. Yeah, So that's what they say. Now, I don't know anything about vultures, and I think I would find it weird that they would throw up in mid-flight. Like you would think that they would land to do that. But I do know that there were people who like took it and tried testing it. Someone actually tasted it, which is like, why would you do that? That's so gross. Um, but yeah, for a while they had no idea, and then eventually someone said, "Oh yeah, vultures. They gorge themselves and then they throw up. So they just happened to be flying over your farm at the time they did it." And then someone ate it. That's so gross. Number 18, Louisiana. The unknowable Marie Laveau. So Marie Laveau lived in New Orleans at the turn of the 19th century and charmed, titillated, and unnerved the community with her practice of voodoo. Laveau told fortunes and created potions and charms on request. She held spiritual ceremonies that led people to become possessed. She also could magically heal the sick. However, stories of her feats have been passed along from one generation of voodoo practitioners to the next, making it impossible to know the truth behind the tales. So outside of that, like voodoo practice, I know they actually people do practice it and it's very weird. Anything, witchcraft related is creepy to me. But I would, outside of that, not because of that, but I so badly want to go to Louisiana and visit New Orleans, go to Bourbon Street, mostly because of the Vampire Diaries, but also because it looks like it would be a really fun place to just kind of go and look around. Even like their cemeteries, as creepy as that sounds, they're actually really beautiful if you think about it. Um, they're like cemetery cities. That's what I would call them. I think they're really cool. I think it's a cool way to honor the dead the way that they built their cemeteries. Some of them, anyway. Not saying that cemeteries that are just regular grass plots aren't cool. They're not. They're just grass plots. I think the little cemetery cities are kind of cool. I don't know. I'm weird that way. Whatever. But I would really like to go and just check it out. I lived in Louisiana when I was like 2 for just a little while, but it was nowhere near New Orleans. And I don't remember much about where that time in my life. I remember bits and pieces. And then what I've been told. My parents worked at a home for troubled girls, and we lived there, but we bounced real quick because there was some shady stuff. So when we realized that there was something not quite right, we bounced. Anyway, you can check it out. It's New Bethany if you want to see what that was about. Number 19, Maine. What happened to Sarah Ware? In 1898, the brutally beaten body of 52-year-old Sarah Ware was discovered in a wooded area of Bucksport. She'd been missing for 2 weeks. Her killer is believed to have been a neighbor, but when the blood-stained hammer believed to be the murder weapon disappeared, the neighbor was acquitted. The case still haunts the town to this day, not just because the case was never solved, but also because the circumstances of her burial are so strange. Her head and body are buried separately with no gravestone. Like, did the killer bury her that way, or did the people bury her that way? Huh. Okay. Number 20. Ew, that picture's creepy. Maryland. House of Horrors. Yeah, I don't like that picture. And I don't even see anything in it, but I don't like it. Let's just scroll up. In 2017, a Bethesda house fire revealed a disturbing find. The body of a man in the basement. Further investigation revealed a mysterious network of tunnels below the foundation of the house that extended all the way to the street. The house owner, Daniel Beckwith, has since been charged with the death of Askia Kafra, the body in the basement. Investigators allege that Beckwith hired Kafra to dig the tunnels but put him in danger due to the unsafe work environment. But the purpose of the tunnels and Beckwith's motives remain a mystery. Yeah, oh, okay, I remember this story. And he got stuck and he ended up dying. um he had this guy coming in and building all these tunnels under his house. I I want to say he thought like for like an apocalypse or something like that. It's really weird. You should go look up the story because it's actually very very interesting and there's a lot more information than just this. But the guy was very, very weird, and he was kind of a recluse as well. And he was like scared of everything, I think. I don't like that picture either. Number 21. Massachusetts, the Black Flash of Provincetown. From 1939 to 1945, the people of Provincetown were terrorized by a being they called the Black Flash. The figure first appeared to a group of children, tall, dressed in black, and growling ominously. In 1945, a group of policemen actually reported seeing the figure leap a 10-foot fence. About a month later, a man threw boiling water at the figure, sending it screaming into the night. It was never seen again. What is that? Like maybe the start of Slender Man or something? Slender Man appeared back in 1939, maybe? Who knows? I saw the Slender Man movie and I was very unimpressed, by the way. It was not what I expected. Number 22, Michigan. What exactly is the Paulding Light? In 1966, a group of teens reported having seen a mysterious light above a valley in Paulding. Scientific explanations such as swamp gas have been rejected in favor of the more popular paranormal theory that the light is from the lantern belonging to local brakeman who was killed while attempting to stop an oncoming train. Michigan Tech students believe it's a phenomenon created by headlights from a nearby road, but the mystery remains officially unsolved. Yeah, obviously, it's probably swamp gas, or maybe even the headlights, but it is a lot more fun to believe the paranormal stories. Even though they're creepy, it's a lot more fun. Number 23, Minnesota, the frozen girl defrosted. In 1981, Jean Hillard's car went off the road near Langby, and the next day, her frozen body was discovered, her eyes wide open, her flesh frozen so solid that doctors couldn't pierce it with a hypodermic needle. Her body temperature was too low to register on a thermometer, but when Hillard thawed, she was very much alive and made a full recovery. Yeah, it was something about the way she was frozen. It's really weird. uh, I believe it's a true story. It's a miraculous story nonetheless, which I think would prove that miracles do exist. One of the reasons we have proof that they exist. But that was a very interesting story. And to imagine being like, what would your mind be thinking if you are actually alive while you're sitting there in a block of ice, or maybe it's not a block of ice, but your body is so frozen? What is your mind thinking? Like, you can't do anything, you can't speak, you can't move, you can't alert anybody that you're alive. Like, what goes through your head? That would be very freaky. Number 24, Mississippi. Phantom Barber of Pasa- Pascagoula. I have no idea if that's right. In 1942, Pascagoula was plagued by a series of peculiar home invasions. The intruder took locks of hair from each of the people whose homes he broke into, according to Southern Living. Really? Southern Living? Okay, so although one man became a suspect, he was never formally charged and passed a lie detector test. No one has ever figured out who the Phantom Barber really was or why he did what he did. That's just weird. Like, what kind of creep are you? Why? Ugh. 25. Missouri. How Robert Rayford contracted AIDS. So in 1969, 16-year-old Robert Rayford was hospitalized in St. Louis for extreme unintended weight loss and a host of infections. The doctors had no answers, and Rayford died. A few years later, HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, was discovered in this country. Subsequently, medical testing of Rayford's blood revealed that he had the virus. Somehow, Rayford, who'd never been out of the country and never had a transfusion, had died of AIDS nearly a decade before it was discovered. Huh, that is strange. How did he get it? Oh, okay, so I'll just be honest, at my ignorance, I don't even know where HIV/AIDS really comes from. I don't know how it's entered into the country, quite honestly. I thought it was like through, like, going out of the country through monkeys, and I'm probably wrong. So it says here, yeah, it originated in non human primates in Central and West Africa. While various subgroups of the virus acquired human infectivity at different times, the global pandemic had its origins in the emergence of one specific strain, HIV-1 subgroup M, in Leopoldville in the Belgian Congo in the 1920s. Okay, so it did come from monkeys, primates. Okay, so I'm not crazy. Absolutely, I'm not. All right, that's number 25, and it didn't take us as long to go through them as I thought it would. So I'm just a fast reader. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget, come back tomorrow and we'll do the last 25 of the states and see what other weird crap we can come across because apparently there's a lot of weird stuff that's happened in America that we just probably don't know a lot about. And if you like me doing these types of things, I can do them more often. If you know of a weird, strange, creepy story from America that you want me to talk about, just email me. Gotta say something 21 at gmail.com. Or you can leave me a comment on the YouTube video and I'll get back to it. Or even go to my Instagram, gotta say something 21. As always, I will leave my link tree in the description box and I will leave a link to this article if you'd like to go and look at it and check out the various links that are listed within the states of the stories. And you can check that out. Don't forget, there's still t shirts on sale. And sign the petition to protect women in prisons. And I hope to see you back here tomorrow. Have a good day and God bless.